Welcome back to the deep dive. I hope you're sitting comfortably, maybe with the lights dimmed a little low, because well, today we are going to mess with your head just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Well, okay, maybe a lot.
Yeah. I'd say we're going for a full recalibration of self-identity today. We are basically taking the house down to the studs.
Fair point. We really are. We're peeling back the curtain on the one thing that everyone assumes is solid. You know who you are, the voice in your head.
The thing you call me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because according to the documents we have in front of us today that you product on, it's really just a mask. It's a tool.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's not even the one in charge.
It creates a fascinating tension, doesn't it? I mean, we spend our whole lives building this ego, polishing it, defending it against insults, worrying about how it looks to other people.
Oh, absolutely.
And then we look at this material and it suggests that the ego is really just a specialized interface for a very specific environment. It's the software, not the user.
Right. It's like finding out you're not the driver of the car. You're just the GPS system thinking it's driving because it's the one shouting the directions.
That is a perfect analogy.
But before we spiral into an existential crisis, which we will, I promise you, we need to set the ground rules. We aren't just telling ghost stories here. We are looking at the mechanics of consciousness, the physics, if you will, of the non-physical.
Right. We're stripping away the superstition and looking at the structural explanation of what happens when we sleep and, more importantly, what happens when we die. This isn't about spooky chains rattling in the attic.
No, definitely not.
It's about energy conversion and psychological reorganization.
So let's introduce our roadmap for today. We are digging into session 242 of the Early Sessions, Book 6 of the Seth Material.
A really pivotal session in the early development of this channel.
And the date of record for this one is Wednesday, March 16, 1966.
Mid-60s, a very interesting time for this material to be coming through. The culture was just starting to open up to these ideas, but Jane Roberts and Robert Butts were doing this in a quiet living room in Elmira, New York.
And before we get any further, I need to declare this podcast will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are here to learn, to question, and to explore. We aren't selling a religion here. We're analyzing a text.
Our mission today is threefold. First, we're going to look at Seth's explanation of the survival personality.
Which is what happens to you after you die.
Exactly. Second, we're going to connect that to something you do every single night, which is sleep.
And third,
And this is honestly my favorite part, we are going to analyze a clairvoyance test involving a VFW ticket that went wrong in the most hilariously human way possible.
oh, the War of Four. I can't wait to get to that. It's like a cosmic game of telephone.
It really is. It demonstrates the technical difficulties of mediumship better than any success story ever could. It shows you the glitches in the software.
But before we get to the heavy philosophy, I want to set the scene. So it's March 16th, 1966. Jane Roberts, the medium, or the translator, as we should probably call her and her husband Rob, are in their apartment. And it's a Wednesday night.
And this is usually a work night for them. They have their session scheduled for 9 p.m.
But this particular night, the vibe is a little different. They are dressed up, they've tidied the living room, they are looking, as Rob puts it, more presentable than usual.
Which, if you know anything about writers and artists, is a significant event in itself.
It really is.
It usually means someone official is coming over.
Right. I imagine Rob actually put on a tie or at least a clean shirt. And the reason is they were expecting a guest, a photographer named Peggy Gallagher from the local paper, the Star-Gazette.
Jane was writing a book on the Seth Material at the time, what would eventually become How to Develop Your ESP Power.
Right.
And her publisher wanted photos of her in a trance state, so Peggy was supposed to come over and capture that visual evidence.
But here is the contextual humor part of our deep dive, the oops moment. 8:30 p.m. rolls around, no Peggy. 9 p.m., no Peggy. They got all dressed up, presumably nervously waiting to perform for the camera, and they got ghosted.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, not ghosted by Seth, thankfully. But what I love about this detail is that Rob actually predicted it.
He did. This is such a great detail about their relationship and their developing abilities.
In his notes, Rob mentions that the day before, on March 15th at 3 p.m., he wrote down a prediction that Peggy wouldn't show up.
Which is such a funny little flex. He predicts she won't come, but he still gets dressed up just in case he's wrong. It's the ultimate battle between psychic intuition and social anxiety.
That's the human condition right there. You trust your intuition, but you also trust social convention. You don't want to be the guy in pajamas when the photographer does show up, even if your gut says she weren't.
And Seth actually confirms this later in the session, right?
He does. He says there was a change of plan that occurred around 3 p.m. due to a disturbance on Peggy's end.
It just grounds the whole thing, doesn't it? We're about to talk about life after death and the nature of the soul, but it starts with the mundane annoyance of a canceled meeting. It reminds you that the psychic work was happening in the middle of real, normal life.
It strips away the glamour. It's not a movie set with fog machines. It's a couple in their living room checking their watches, wondering if they should take their nice shoes off because their feet hurt.
So, Peggy doesn't show. Jane goes into trance. Seth comes through, and he wastes no time. He jumps right back into a discussion they had started in a previous session about the ego.
And this is where we have to really pay attention. Because the first thing Seth says is the answer to the big question, do we survive death?
And don't leave us hanging.
The answer is an unequivocal yes. The individual survives physical death, and it's a very big but.
Here comes the twist. There's always a twist.
You aren't exactly you in the way you think you are. Seth says there is a reorganization of psychological elements.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if someone tells me you survived death but you're reorganized, that sounds a little bit like we're going to dismantle your house and build a boat.
Right.
It's the same materials, but it's definitely not a house anymore. If I'm reorganized, am I still me?
That's actually a decent analogy. Seth breaks down the concept of the ego in a way that is really humbling. He says the personality is never static. It changes even during life.
I think he uses the example of the child versus the adult rock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He says the child's ego is not the adult's ego. Think about you, the person listening to this right now. Are you the same person you were at 5 years old?
I mean, I have the same social security number. I have the same parents.
Yeah.
But if I sat down and had a conversation with 5-year-old me, we wouldn't have much in common. He likes trucks and eating dirt. I like diving deep into esoteric texts and, well, I don't eat dirt anymore. Most days.
Ideally. But Seth's point is that we perceive the similarity, we see the continuity of the body and the memory, and we ignore the differences, but they are distinct psychological patterns.
That makes sense.
The 5-year-old ego had different goals, different fears, different ways of processing the world than the adult ego. The you of today would be unrecognizable to the you of 20 years ago.
So the ego isn't this solid, eternal diamond. It's more like a fluid or a costume.
Seth calls it a well-specialized portion of the personality. He says the ego is well-equipped to operate under specific physical circumstances.
Specialized. That's the key word.
It is. Think of the ego as a diving suit. If you want to explore the bottom of the ocean, which is physical reality in this metaphor, you need a diving suit. It keeps you alive, it lets you see, it lets you move, it protects you from the pressure.
But if you come back up to the surface and get out of the water...
Take the suit off. You don't need it. In fact, it would be heavy and clumsy and useless on dry land. You can't run a marathon in a deep-sea diving suit.
Precisely. The ego is the diving suit. It is designed to navigate time and space and physical matter. It deals with survival, social hierarchy, taxes, traffic, making sure you don't walk into walls. But when those physical circumstances no longer exist, meaning death, the ego isn't the right tool for the job anymore.
So when we die, we don't just disappear. But the diving suit, the part of me that worries about my credit score or what my hair looks like, that part takes a backseat.
Yes, exactly. Seth says the ego does not disappear, however. It merely takes a back seat in some respects, as your own subconscious does during physical existence. It becomes a stored memory, a capability you have, but not who you are.
And this brings us to the sleep analogy. I love this part because it makes the concept so much less scary.
It makes it relatable. Seth compares death to sleep. He says when you sleep, the ego becomes unfocused but still present.
Think about when you're dreaming. You're still you. You're experiencing things. You might be flying, or you might be back in high school taking a test you didn't study for.
Oh, the classic stress dream.
Right. But you aren't critically analyzing it with your waking brain. You aren't thinking, wait, I graduated 20 years ago and humans can't fly. You're just being.
That's the ego being unfocused. Its goals and attitudes color the dream. If you're stressed at work, you might have a stress dream. But the ego isn't running the show. It's not the director anymore. It's maybe a consultant or a passenger.
So dying is basically just a really long, weird nap where your subconscious takes the wheel.
In a way, yes. Seth says the survival personality, meaning the you after death, has the same relationship to the ego as the dreaming personality does to the ego now.
So we are already practicing for death every single night. That's a chilling thought, but also kind of cool.
That's the implication. We shift out of ego dominance every night. We enter a state where the inner self is in charge, and the ego is dormant. Death is just a more permanent shift into that state. You aren't going somewhere new, you're going somewhere you visit every night. You just usually forget the trip when you wake up.
That is strangely comforting. It means the state of being dead is an alien. It's something we're intimately familiar with.
And Seth goes further. He says it is a great mistake to imagine that the human being has but one ego. He suggests that during a single lifetime, we display several different egos. And if you look at reincarnation, which is a core part of Seth's teaching, you have had many egos across many lives.
Right. The ego I have now, the person sitting here talking to you, is just the latest model. I've got a garage full of old models from previous lives.
And the whole self, the entity that you really are, is aware of all of them. But the ego you're using right now usually isn't. It thinks it's the only one. It thinks it's the star of the show.
Which explains why ghosts or spirits sometimes seem confused, or why communication is so difficult. And this is the second major pillar of today's deep dive, the psychological bridge.
This is where we get into the mechanics of the haunting or the mediumship session. Why is it so hard for the dead to talk to the living?
You'd think if my great-aunt Edna wanted to tell me where she hid the money, she could just whisper it in my ear. But it's never that simple. It's always knocking on walls or flickering lights or vague feelings or seeing a robin in the yard.
Seth explains this through the concept of reshuffling. Remember, the survival personality is under the control of the inner self. The ego is in the back seat. But to talk to a physical person like you or me, that survival personality has to relate to us on our level.
They have to put the diving suit back on.
Exactly. They have to momentarily give the ego greater rein. They have to drag that old personality out of the closet and put it on so they can form words and concepts that we understand.
And Seth says this causes disorientation.
Huge disorientation. Imagine waking up from a deep abstract dream where you were pure energy and suddenly being forced to solve a calculus problem while wearing a tight suit of armor. You're being asked to manipulate data in a way that is now unfamiliar to you.
It's like trying to speak a language you haven't used in 20 years. You stumble. You mix up words. You use the wrong tense.
It's worse than that, because the fundamental mode of communication has changed. Seth is very specific here. Survival personalities communicate via telepathy.
Telepathy. No mouths, no vocal cords.
And no words. They deal in concepts. Direct experience. If I want to tell you about a dog telepathically, I don't send the letters DOG. I send the concept of dog. The smell, the fur, the bark, the loyalty, the feeling of the animal.
Okay, so they are beaming a zip file of dogness into our brains. But we, the living, are obsessed with words. We need the letters. We need the label.
We are ego-oriented. We process everything through language and senses. So there's a massive translation problem. The spirit sends a concept. The medium or the receiver has to catch that concept and translate it into words.
And that translation is where the errors happen.
That's where the psychological bridge comes in. Seth explains that a framework is erected between the communicator, meaning Seth, and the medium Jane. It's like a translation layer, or the middleware software.
Seth notes that he is in a unique position here, right? He's not just some random ghost.
Correct. Seth says he is advanced. He describes himself as an energy essence personality. He is aware of all his past selves simultaneously. He speaks as a whole self, not just a reassembled past personality. He doesn't have strong emotional bonds to the physical system anymore. He doesn't need to put on an old mask to talk.
But he still needs the bridge.
He does. Because Jane is still physical. So Seth projects imagery or concepts, and the psychological framework uses Jane's personal associations, her vocabulary, her memories, to translate those images into the English words we read in the book.
It's like he's projecting a movie into her head, and she is describing what she sees using her own vocabulary.
Or sometimes he impresses her directly with the concept, and her brain automatically matches the words. But it's a delicate process. It requires focus and energy.
And speaking of delicate processes and things going wrong, this brings us to the absolute highlight of this session, the envelope experiment.
This is where the rubber meets the road. Philosophy is great, but can you tell me what's inside the sealed envelope? This is the put up or shut up moment.
For those new to the Seth material, Rob would often conduct tests. He would seal an object in a double envelope, sandwich it between cardboard so you couldn't feel the shape, and ask Jane while entranced to describe it.
It's a classic scientific control. Remove the sensory data test, the extrasensory perception.
So let's look at the object for session 242. It was an unused ticket, specifically a ticket to a VFW Veterans of Foreign Wars ball.
A physical object, yellow card stock, heavy black type.
And the backstory is hilarious in itself. They got this ticket months ago from a friend of a neighbor. They took it just to be polite.
Rob writes, "We preferred not to go, but took the ticket to avoid explanations. They thought it would be dull.
Classic introvert behavior. Here, take this ticket to a dance. Oh, thanks so much. But internally, you're thinking, I will never, ever use this. I will burn this before I go to a dance. Rob found it in a coat pocket months later and decided to use it for the test.
So Jane is in a trance. She has no idea what's in the envelope. And she starts getting hits.
Let's run through the wins first. She says there is a connection with a street or avenue of escape.
The ticket had Gray Street printed on it. But Seth interprets this as an avenue of escape because Rob and Jane wanted to escape going to the boring dance.
That is fascinating. The psychic impression wasn't just the text on the paper. It was the emotional residue attached to the object. The feeling of, I don't want to go to this.
Exactly. Telepathy picks up the emotion often stronger than the physical facts. The intent to escape was stamped on that ticket just as clearly as the ink. She also mentions a house or residence. The ticket listed a hotel and specific rooms.
Close enough. She says neat, even script squared off. And a block of matter.
Which perfectly describes the block of heavy black text on the rectangular ticket.
She mentions color at the top strips.
The object was yellow cardstock, but the heavy black type looked like strips. Jane admitted she saw strips of black.
So she's seeing the shape, the layout, the text, and feeling the emotion of the object. That's pretty good. That's better than I could do.
It is statistically significant. But then we get the error. And it is the most revealing error I've ever seen in these transcripts.
The war versus 4 confusion. I love this so much.
Jane says the number 4 in the center of a square.
Now, looking at the ticket, there is no big number 4. So is it a miss?
Seth explains it later. He says he was trying to transmit the word war, as in VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars. He specifically wanted the plural wars.
Oh.
But look at what happened in the translation. Seth sends the concept of wars. Jane's physical brain receives it. But the sound of the word wars.
Sounds like 4s.
Exactly. And Jane's brain, trying to make sense of this abstract data, interpreted wars as the number 4.
It's a pun, a psychic pun, or a homonym error.
It's a homonym error. It proves that the transmission isn't a text message. It's a signal that has to be decoded. Seth says the plural gave him the idea of the number which was blended with the sound of war into 4.
That is incredible. It really highlights that game of telephone we talked about. Seth is shouting wars and Jane's brain goes, 4s. Okay, I see a 4.
It illustrates the earlier point perfectly. The survival personality Seth is sending a concept. The ego Jane's reassembled processing system is trying to manipulate that data into something recognizable. And sometimes it grabs the wrong file. It grabs the file that sounds the same but means something totally different.
It makes you wonder how many wrong psychic predictions are just bad translations. Maybe the spirit said you're going to meet a pair like the fruit, and the psychic says you're going to meet a pair of people.
It's very likely. Words are slippery. Concepts are pure, but words are slippery. This War of 4 incident is a perfect example of the friction between the non-physical and the physical.
Then we have the dog connection.
Yeah.
This one feels like a bit of a stretch to me. I'm putting my skeptic hat on for this one.
Seth admits it's a stretch. Jane got an impression of a connection with the dog.
And the reality.
The ticket came from a neighbor, Leonard. Leonard has a girlfriend. The girlfriend has a dog.
That is reaching. That is 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Seth says the dog was legitimate but too far afield. It's like Jane's radar picked up the object, traced it back to Rob, back to the neighbor, or back to the girlfriend, and found a dog.
It shows that the psychic web is interconnected, but sometimes you pull on a thread that's way too long. Just because it's connected doesn't mean it's relevant.
It's noise. If you tune a radio, sometimes you pick up a station from the next town over that interferes with the one you want. The dog was the interference.
Before we wrap up the analysis, we should briefly mention the other experiment that happened that night, the Dr. InStream experiment.
Right. This was separate from the envelope. This was a test involving a Dr. InStream, a researcher interested in the Seth material.
In this one, Jane sees very different things. A cycle, a birthday cake, a small, round object shaped somewhat like a ring, but it is not a ring.
She describes it as grayish color, like stone, very old. She sees a broken circle.
What I find interesting here is the shift in how she sees it. With the ticket, she was getting words and blocks of text. Here, she's seeing vivid images.
Seth notes this distinction. He says sometimes he impresses Jane directly with telepathy, and that's usually the concepts. But sometimes he uses the framework to project images like a slideshow.
So with the ticket, maybe she was getting the concept of the text. With the stone ring, she was being shown a picture.
Exactly. Seth says when he receives data in the form of images, the psychological framework is operating. On my end, this framework projects imagery,
It's like the difference between reading a description of a painting and actually seeing the painting.
and it shows the complexity of the phenomenon. Channeling isn't just hearing voices, it's a multimedia experience involving sound, sight, emotion, and conceptual decoding. It's a massive technological feat of consciousness.
And when you think about it, it's a miracle they get anything right at all. Wars becoming four seems like a minor glitch, considering they are bridging two different dimensions of reality.
Absolutely. The fact that she got Gray Street and the shape of the text is remarkable. The 4 error just proves the human element in the loop.
So let's zoom out. What does this all mean for us, the people listening to this?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it changes how we view death. It's not an end. It's a reorganization.
Shuffling of the deck.
Right. And it changes how we view our current life.
Yeah.
The ego, you're so attached to the one, worrying about your job, your reputation, your looks. It's just a tool. It's a mask. It's a diving suit.
You take it off every night.
You do. You practice dying every night. You let the ego unfocus. You let the inner self take over. And in the morning, you put the mask back on and go to work.
It kind of takes the pressure off, doesn't it? If this personality is just a role I'm playing, I can maybe relax a little bit. I can enjoy the play. I don't have to take it so seriously.
And you can realize that the inner you, the one watching the play, is the real you. And that part is eternal. It doesn't die. It just changes costumes.
That is a powerful thought. We learned that death is just a reorganization. We learned that the ego is a temporary interface, and we learned that even spirits can get confused between the word wars and the number 4.
Never forget the War of 4. It's a lesson in humility for both the living and the dead. Even in the afterlife, semantics matter.
Now we've only scratched the surface of the Seth Material. There are literally thousands of pages of this stuff.
And it gets much deeper. The nature of time, the nature of physical matter, the creation of reality. It's a rabbit hole that goes forever.
If you want to dig deeper into these sessions, and we highly encourage you to do so, you need to go to the source. This material comes from the Seth Material and is published by the New Awareness Network.
You can find the books, including the early sessions like the one we discussed today, at the New Awareness Network website and bookstore. That address is sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
Go read the original transcripts. Seeing how Jane and Rob navigated this day by day is a masterclass in itself.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought, something to chew on while you're trying to fall asleep tonight.
Let's hear it.
If your ego is just a mask you wear for this lifetime and you take it off when you sleep, who is the you that is listening to this deep dive right now? Is it the mask? Or is it the actor behind the mask? And if you take the mask off, who's left looking in the mirror?
Wow. That's going to keep me up tonight.
Me too.
Too.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. See you in the next one.